Welcome to the podcast. We do recover with Jared Miller, your host.
And I'm Dr. Terry Sellers, your co-host.
This is a podcast about recovery from addiction.
We want to talk about what successful recovery can look like.
Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn.
Episode 91 is underway. Today I got a special episode for you guys. We're going to do a topic-based episode. And listen, I can't come on here and talk for 50 minutes by myself. So I had to do some serious recruiting this week. And I've got some guests on here to help me with this topic. It's a big one. It's a good one. We're going to get to it. Let me introduce some of my friends that I've invited on the podcast. We'll start off with Shell Addison. She is a clinical mental health counselor. She works for Steps Recovery Centers. I have the pleasure of working with her on the clinical team. She's amazing. We have Ty Empey. Ty Empey is the marketing and intake coordinator at Hope Rising.
Yeah, buddy.
Thanks for coming on, buddy.
Good to be here.
And then, of course, we got
Dr. Terry Sellers, your co-host. Oh, no? Wait,
no, my fill-in co-host.
Oh, that's right.
The prettier co-host, Mandy Miller,
right.
my wife.
Is that stealing someone's identity? Did I just steal his identity?
A little bit. It's
Don't
cool.
sue me.
She's gonna come on, and I think she's got some really good questions from like a family member's perspective, a normie's perspective, right? So it's gonna be good. It's gonna be a good one. We always start off with, though, is a little warm up, new and good. Practice a little positive psychology. So
New and good.
it's pretty intense, right?
That felt pretty good.
So Shell, why don't you start us off? What's new? What's going on in your world?
Oh, what's new and good? I don't know. Well, doing this is pretty new. It's pretty good. I went shoe shopping today. For me, that's always good.
Really good.
Always good.
Shell always has fancy shoes.
Fabulous shoes.
That's like the talk of the week is what shoes is
What
Shell going to
shoes
come
is
in
she
with?
gonna
Yeah.
Where do you get them at?
Well, today I went to Dillard's because I was feeling fancy.
Oh, all right.
Bougie.
All right.
Oh, very. Yes.
Bougie.
Everything was on sale, so I was
Ooh.
bougie light.
Back to school, right?
Yeah.
There you go. All right, Empey, what's new and good with you?
Probably the greatest thing in my life right now is my little 15-month-old daughter just learned how to start blowing bubbles in the swimming pool. And
Adorable.
It is.
Yes.
I've been taking her out to the swimming pool quite a bit, and we're practicing going underwater and getting water on her face and things like that. And so she just learned how to start blowing bubbles. So she's getting comfortable sticking her face in. Now she'll just bob her whole head and blow bubbles and pop up. It's super cute.
You're a blessed
so
man.
cute.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
That is awesome. Donovan, I see you over there.
Yeah, not today, man.
No,
Not today.
You don't want to talk about the 4 terabytes of
4
data.
terabytes of gone data from my hard drive.
We walked in today, and Shell and I were like, "Oh man, something's wrong." Like, I lost 4 terabytes of data. Good times. And then the beautiful Mandy Miller. What's new and good?
Well, school's starting next week, and that was going to be my new and good last week, but it wasn't because I wasn't ready. Still not ready, but I'm more excited. So I'm excited for the kids to come back. I met one of the parents today, and she was super excited for her kid to come. So, just getting jazzed about that.
what grade do you teach?
I'm the life skills teacher, so 6th and 7th
Okay.
grade for students with severe disabilities.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So she
great.
studies behaviors and stuff like that too. It's pretty cool.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm her full-time project.
There you
That's
go.
why she married me, right?
Yeah.
Special needs, Jared. So thanks for
What's
for
your new
checking
and
in,
good,
baby.
Jay?
my new and good. Let's see. The Traeger. We got a Traeger a few weeks ago, and I have been smoking so much meat on that thing. I already have had to change out the pan tray twice. I mean, you name it. Burgers, chicken,
Everything.
fish, ribs, steak. Oh, yeah. Yeah, pork loins, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm really loving how you're bringing it into work to share with your coworkers. That part's been really amazing.
Sorry, I have it. Yeah,
I'm just saying.
I'll have to start doing that, though, because we have leftovers.
Camaraderie, team
Yeah,
building.
I know, right?
Think about the rest of us.
Okay, you're right. Absolutely.
How's your supplement project you got going on?
Oh, it's great.
Yeah?
It's, right now I'm just waiting for the website to finish being built. We got the labels that are coming in. We have our custom boxes that we're going to ship them out on their way. They actually are delivered next Friday. So everything's coming together.
I feel like that'd be a hard industry to break into. I feel like there's lots of those out there. So that's cool that.
Yeah, we're trying to
got that
go
going
along
on.
the niche of the like mental health type stuff, right? The nootropic style. I don't know that we'll ever do like the sports supplements because like you're saying, there's tons. But yeah, I'm excited about it. Thanks for asking, man.
Yeah, buddy.
Let's get to the topic. Today is treatment talk. The idea that I got from this was I actually got an email from a listener, and they said, hey, I'm struggling. I struggle with alcohol. I've never been to treatment. I hear you talk about treatment all the time. I'm kind of scared to death. So I thought, why not do an episode on that topic, right? So we have, like I said, Ty, does marketing and intake. How do they start the process, Ty?
Well, usually, like if I ever get a phone call from somebody that has never been to treatment before, then a lot of times they have no clue like what the process looks like. And so for me, I try to spend, especially the first few minutes of that first conversation with a new person, really just kind of like laying out an overall roadmap. Like, okay, so this is what it looks like. These are some of the hurdles. This is what we're going to go over. So can I just start asking you questions? And then a lot of times just giving them kind of like a few steps ahead and say, like, okay, this is what needs to happen. It lets them feel like, okay, I can do this, and really just lay it out for them and like, okay, I need this information. I need you to do that. I need to spend some time with you on the phone. Does that make sense? And they're like, okay,
Absolutely.
yeah, I can do that. And it lets them feel like, okay, I can start doing this sort of thing. So
Yeah, it gives them kind of the encouragement to follow through.
yeah.
So typically, though, there's an assessment, right? Because when we talk about treatment, I think everybody thinks going away somewhere, like the movies, right, babe? Like you see the movies, people go to rehab, they go away to a place that's not always what it looks like, right? Typically, there's an assessment that's done based on how much you've been drinking and how often. You're referred to a level of care.
Yes. And the assessment that I do with them is very like dumbed down, very basic. It's just general information. It's not anything like the assessments that you guys do, like clinical assessments, right?
Right.
We don't dive into anything, like we don't start making suggestions about behavior modification or anything like that. It's mostly just information gathering. Like, okay, where are you living right now? What drugs are you using? What are you struggling with? How much? Are you currently taking any medications? Do you have a history of seizures? What does your insurance situation look like? Do you have a job right now? Do you have any legal obligations? It's just really kind of a comprehensive overall view of what do you got going on in your life right now? How did you get to this point? Why do you need this service? And then that kind of helps me to say like, okay, this person is homeless and, they are using needles to inject heroin. They probably need residential or detox or whatever. And so it's really just kind of getting all the information and then saying like, okay, I feel like this person kind of fits in here, and then taking it to the clinical team and being like, hey, this person is requesting a lower level of care, but I feel like they need a higher level of care. What do you think? And then getting the clinical perspective from that.
Yeah, it's a lot of information gathering so that you can form some type of, where are they going to start? What's going to be the best thing for them? Yeah.
One thing I want to mention with that, like a lot of people will call and like I try and let them know like, hey, I've got to get a lot of information, and I'll start asking them like, okay, what are you using? How much? And how long have you been using that? And a lot of times people feel like I'm like interrogating them, and we don't care. If you're calling looking into rehab, I don't care what you're using. I don't care how much. I don't care how miserable your life is.
No shame.
I'm not going to call the cops. I'm not trying to get you in trouble. It's just so that we have a good understanding of your situation so that we can start to build up from that. So if you're looking for rehab, be prepared to just spill your guts and get it all out there. We're here to help. We're not trying to get you in trouble for, the whole reason why you're calling.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only that, but you can't really get the best care for you if you're not transparent and honest, right?
Right.
If you're like, oh yeah, I have a drink or two every once in a while, it's like, but really you've been drinking a fifth a day, you're going to be miserable. You know what I mean? At a lower level of care. Speaking of treatment, I totally spaced our sponsorship mention. Episode 91, part 1 is brought to us by Steps Recovery Centers. Steps Recovery Centers is ready to help you or a loved one get help as soon as you're ready to reach out. Reach out by giving them a call at 801-800-8142. Bam! Good job, babe. It's almost like you've heard that a time or two,
One
huh?
or two times.
Or you can check out their website. That's stepsrc.com. Again, they have detox, inpatient, outpatient, aftercare. Yeah, we love those guys. Thanks for sponsoring this podcast. And you work for Hope Rising, which we network with, right? I mean, it's funny. When we first started, I thought people were like, it's so different than I thought. You know what I mean? Like
What do
the
you mean?
camaraderie and like I thought people, you know, like, oh, I'm going to hang
Treatment
my
center
flag.
wars?
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
you know, almost like high school rivalry type
I feel like that happens between clients more so than like
treatment centers.
treatment centers. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because it's like we're all neighbors doing the same thing, and it's like there's people that wouldn't be a good fit for our program that like need to go to steps, you know, and so it's and vice versa, and so it all works out. Like, unfortunately, there's plenty of people that are out there that are struggling with drugs, and so
Yeah.
we need everybody, all the treatment centers, even more of them.
And I think, like you said, getting them to the best place is probably the most important.
Well, I think that's the best part because it's heartbreaking when you realize that you're not a good fit. You're like, what's going to happen? I can't just send them out. You're like, wait, I have options. I have neighbors. I have people.
Absolutely. Or like for us, when we have clients that have maybe, you know, broken a behavior contract or they're just no longer working out in our care, it's nice to have, you don't want to just turn them away, right? Like that's abandonment. You want to be able to refer them to somewhere where maybe that's their wake up call and they have an opportunity to still get help.
Absolutely.
So my question now is for you, Shell. So they come in, right? Somebody like Ty helps them get into the place. What type of, we were talking about this the other day in our clinical meeting, what type of modalities do you think work best for somebody with the substance abuse or, you know what I mean? Some of those mental health.
The big question. Here's the thing about modalities, and I say this knowing that I mostly do dialectical behavioral therapy. I don't think it's one modality fits all. If you really want to help somebody, you got to meet them where they're at and find a treatment that's going to work for them. I kind of like a potpourri of treatment, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little smidge of that. What's really going to help them? I can present something to a client and they're like, yeah, this is not working for me. I'm not feeling better. And so I'm like, all right, well, let's try something else.
Yeah, that's, I'm glad you said that. I think for me, a big indicator that helps is their self-assessments. Like, is their pause going down? Is there, did they come in with suicidal ideation? Is that getting better? Like, and really just kind of tracking, okay, is this tool the right tool for this individual? If not, got to find a different tool.
Well, so much about it is getting to know your person, getting to know them. If you want to walk beside them and be their partner in their treatment, you got to get to know them. So much about mental health treatment and substance treatment, it revolves around this sense of moral failing and the shame and the blame and the, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want you to look at me and think of me. You really got to let people know I am sincerely here to be your partner in saving your own life. What's that going to look like? What's that going to mean for you? Not for me, but for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I have a
love that.
question for you, Shell.
Okay.
So what, because I'm used to, before they get into the program, I'm used to kind of explaining the overall, like, very broad kind of overview of what it looks like. And I was, the stuff that I talk about is more so like, this is what the schedule looks like. This is what the curriculum looks like. This is how long you should expect, things like that. What advice would you have to a brand new client that barely gets into the program? Maybe even like the therapist team hasn't even met with them yet. What are like some
pointers,
some ideas or like what advice would you have to somebody just coming in? They're through the admissions process, they get into the program. What sort of like headspace should they be in, or what sort of like problems should they expect or emotions to expect? Like, what advice would you have for them right when they get into the program?
This suddenly feels like a lot of pressure. Honestly, the thing that I tell all my clients on the first meeting, be willing. This is willing. I'm open. I'm accepting. I want whatever's coming at me, knowing that the people that you're coming to, they're here for you. They want to help you. They've heard things. They haven't heard your thing, but they've heard things, and they're not there to judge you. They're there to help you.
Yeah.
And come with the willingness. Come with the willingness, come with the openness. Nobody likes going into the unknown.
Right.
Nobody likes going somewhere they haven't been. Nobody likes talking to people they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got to be willing. Be at least willing to give it a try. Just try it. And be willing to advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
If you don't like something, please say something.
Yeah.
Don't just sit there and say, well, I'm feeling worse and this is awesome, but this must be what it is to get better.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Physically, yeah, you're going to feel terrible. But emotionally, you got to start moving that metric towards, at the very, very least, I feel safe. Bare minimum, I feel safe.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Did that
Totally
kind of
agree with
answer
that.
your question?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I like how willingness was a big thing, and I like how you said it's okay to talk about things that like you're struggling with or like might not agree with or like whatever, because I think a lot of times people come into treatment and they're like, they think that they're just going to be healed, and it's like, oh, I'm going here and all will be well and all my problems will go away, and then they get in there and they feel like leaving, or they still feel like using, or they're super sad, or all these emotions start hitting them and they want to leave and they want to run, but they feel like they can't tell the staff members about it because it's like, oh, I'll get in trouble. And it's like, if you feel like leaving, talking about it. If you're feeling like using, talk about it. Like, this is the place to talk about all those things.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the advice that I would give, right? Is so many times, and listen, when they first come in, it's understandable. You're in a new environment. You don't know any of these people. Oftentimes, you're coming maybe from a different state, a different city, a different location.
Worst summer camp ever.
Yeah, and so
Or the greatest.
or the greatest. Yeah.
But maybe not at first.
So I think that if you haven't started actively participating, not participating with prompts, not getting called on, if you haven't started actively participating in groups after your first week, you're kind of just a butt in a seat. Like if you have some stuff you're struggling with, if you're going through grief, if you're going through shame, if you're going through some of the topics that keep us using, like you said, talk about it. Because the more it just sits in your head, the more you're going to want to run.
Yeah.
The more it sits in your head, the more you're going to want to use. The more that you sit there and you're quiet and you're kind of isolated in a room full of people, the less you're going to feel welcome, the less you're going to get connected, the less camaraderie amongst your peers you're going to build. Does that make sense? So I always say, like I did a group this week and I handed out 10 pieces of toilet paper tissue. I said, you know what toilet paper's for, right? Getting rid of the crap.
Stuff.
You like that, Sean? I didn't cuss.
Thank you.
And so I tell them, like, I want you to tear off a tissue and whatever you're struggling with, dump it here. Leave it here.
I like
right?
that.
After this group, I don't want you to, you know what I mean? Like, let's share. Let's get vulnerable. Let's get open.
Yeah.
And usually it's awkward for the first minute or two. It takes one. As soon as one person gets vulnerable, boom. It's like you watch it. It's like a domino effect.
That's cool.
People just need permission to go, this is about me really ugly. And is it safe to share it? But once they share it, it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't die.
Yeah. One of the first things I like to tell clients is emotions are not good. They're not bad. They're not wicked. They are signals. They are just signals from your brain saying, pay attention to this and resolve it. So if you're angry, it's because something's been taken from you. If you're sad, it's because you've experienced some kind of loss. If you're ashamed, it's because you know you weren't doing what you wanted to do. That doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. Your brain, your soul, your heart, whatever you want to call it, just wants you to pay attention to it and resolve it. And that's it. And you would not believe the way that people's eyes light up. They're like, wait. So if I just follow this feeling and resolve it, I will feel better. It's like, that's the magic.
Yep.
And it didn't come from me. It was all
right,
you.
Right. Yep. I just provided the roadmap.
Yeah.
So this is great stuff. And I love this, right? Because we're talking about motivation, internal, external, being vulnerable, being open. But I'm sure that there's some questions that people have, just general questions. So Mandy,
Yes.
you hypothetically need to go to treatment. You're
Okay.
considering it. What
Yeah.
are some of the questions you're going to have for us?
I think my first question would be, how long is it going to be? And what do I need to expect? Because I probably have my job, probably have my family. Am I supposed to just leave them for months? Who's going to provide for them?
It's a great
how's
question.
that going to work? Yeah. So those would probably be my questions.
Do you ever get those questions, Ty?
All the time. There, and that's what I love about my job, because like generally it's all the same, but everybody's story is so different. And like one person might still have a job, one person might not have a job, one person might have kids that need to be taken care of, one person might not, you know. And so I just try to really ask as many questions to you or whoever the client is, and really figure out their situation, then just help them start problem solving. And so if you have a job, you know, does your boss know what's going on? Do you have FMLA? Do you have a way to take some time off work? Here's generally how long you can expect. You know, do you have family members that can help watch kids? How many kids do you have? Are they going to, you know, do you have family members close by? And if things don't line up, then, you know, we just keep trying to problem solve, whatever.
Let's get those kind of soft, right? We'll call them soft timelines, because it depends on you.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of clients don't understand. If you come in and you sit and you're just a butt in a chair for 2 weeks, you're probably going to do 45 days, right? Like how active and how ready are you for change is a big thing that we monitor on the clinical side. But what kind of soft timelines do you give them?
30 to 45 days is about average. I typically try to let people know it's going to be about a month or so.
That's for residential, right?
Residential.
For inpatient, where they have to be away from their job and their family and their kids.
Yep, and that's kind of a good starting line. But like you said, like, what are you going to do with your time there? And, you know, are you going to waste time? Like, I always like to tell clients that, like, hey, everything you do, these therapists are going to put it in the computer, and it's going to be a little note that says, like, so-and-so is being really quiet and they're not participating. They need more time, you know? And so I hit the ground running. When you come in, hit the ground running. That's the best, most effective way to not only get through it faster, but to get more out of your experience in the time that you are spending away from your family and your job and all that sort of thing.
So Shell's a rock star at this. Let's find out what that clinical note would actually sound like.
Oh, yeah.
You got somebody passive.
Yeah.
They're not participant. What is when you're writing a UR, utilization review, you're asking for more time. What does that sound like?
Well, typically I go to what are the behaviors I'm seeing, you know, client is showing resistance. They are not participating in treatment. They're withholding. It's clear that they're withholding in the session. There's been an incongruence between what they're writing on their OQ form and what they're telling in session, which speaks to either a lack of rapport or some of that deep-rooted shame that says, yeah, I want to fix this, but I'm not going to tell you about it. And, you know, I just kind of, I don't know, I put really big thesaurus-y words on it. So, you know,
Thesaurus.
that's more for me than for anybody else.
I love it. But it's funny you say that, though, because it's so true, right? Every week the clients fill out a self-assessment form. And when you get a client that's like, you know, anxiety, 0, depression, 0, and yet they're sitting in the corner bouncing their knee and they're isolating, you know,
They don't even look at you without tears.
right, their average daily, like they can't get up on time and make it to TC. They can't do their chores. They can't dress themselves. They're unkept. It's like, okay, either you're living in a different reality than I'm seeing, or you're just trying to paint a prettier picture than.
The resistance is strong with that one.
Yes, yes, I love it.
So when you're doing groups, is it always groups? Is it ever like by yourself?
Oh, we do group and individual therapy.
Is one more than the other?
More what?
Like, do you do more groups with people, more individuals with people? Is it like how much do you have to work with other people?
This is what you go ahead.
Well, it just depends. Like I do 4 groups a week, and then I see my clients weekly, depending on my caseload. I mean, I might see, 10 people a week and then do 4 groups. I might see 4 people a week and then do more groups. It just depends on what my load is. But even if I don't meet with them individually, I'm always poking my head around,
Reading tech notes.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Ty?
I was just gonna say I always tell people, there's a schedule planned throughout every day, and so generally, you wake up, there's some sort of exercise, you either go to the gym or something, then you have some time to eat breakfast, get ready for the day, then you generally have like a morning block of classes, groups, sessions, whatever's on the schedule for that day. You break for lunch, and then afternoon session, like block of groups and whatnot, and then you break for dinner, and then usually in the evenings they go to meetings or downtime or work on assignments or whatever. And so every day is pretty planned.
That was like exactly it.
Yeah, like
well
he
done.
nailed it right on the head.
Nailed it.
I've answered that question.
Have you guys
a time or
seen?
two.
Have you seen our schedule over there, Stubbs? All right, stay tuned. We're going to be back right after this 30-second break from our sponsors for episode 91, part 2. Thanks for listening.
You are listening to We Do Recover with Jared Miller and co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. We'll be right back after this short break with more of We Do Recover with Jared Miller, sponsored by Steps Recovery Center and the Hilton Garden Inn.
I'm Desmond Lomax, one of the clinical executives here at Steps Recovery, and once you become in the Steps family, you're just a part of the Steps family. A lot of us have overcome substances, overcome addiction, and now we're able to help other people. Second of all, we're also going to help you in a way where you can afford to be helped. Third of all, we're going to give you the same quality that many organizations are charging 2 to 3 times, and it's more about you than it is about our organization.
We welcome you back to We Do Recover with Jared Miller, co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. And now with part 2 of our podcast, Jared Miller and Dr. Terry Sellers.
Or beautiful Mandy Miller.
That's right.
Filling in for the doc,
Not
Terry
Dr.
Sellers.
We
Babe,
miss him.
could you imagine, though, if you had you know what I mean? If you were a doctor?
I should have been.
Like, we would be rich.
I know. I should have been.
Filthy rich.
My little sister did it. Why not me? I can do it.
Hey, shout out to Amy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good choice.
Dr. Repco, Amy.
Yeah. What is she? Is it doctor?
PA, physician's
Yeah.
assistant. That's right. Well, let's get rock and rolling. So, episode 91, part 2 is rock and rolling. Why don't you take our sponsorship mention?
So our part 2 sponsorship is the Hilton Garden Inn here in sunny St. George, Utah. It's always sunny and bright at the Hilton Garden Inn. We love it over there. The rooms are clean. The pool is great. Great amenities. The staff is super friendly. So, yeah, if you're coming to St. George, check out the Hilton Garden Inn. They'll treat you right.
We now have more listeners outside of the state of Utah than we do in the state of Utah.
That's cool.
Arizona, California, and Colorado all passed up Utah for downloads. And we have them as far as Canada, Africa, Sweden, some shout out to London. I got some listeners in London. Yeah. So listen, if you're not from here and you don't know what sunny St. George is, go to Google, type in Hilton Garden Inn, St. George, Utah. Right. Come visit. It's beautiful here. We have Zion.
Come in October through April.
Yes.
And maybe don't come like
weather.
right now. If
Yeah,
you
it's
value,
a little warm.
Your body temperature.
If you want to melt like a snowman, come right now because it's like 110 degrees.
Yeah.
We're crazy that we live here in the summer, guys.
I have no idea why I live in the desert.
Let's get back after it. So we're talking about treatment, right? We're talking about kind of what to expect. We got Mandy on here, hitting with some great questions that we probably wouldn't think of because we do this every day, right? Like this is just life for us. I love that Ty mentioned, and I'm just going to kind of echo, if you're needing some help, when you make that phone call, don't sugarcoat it. Just give us, just be real, be raw, be honest. That's really the only way we can help you is if we know what we're really dealing with. Shell was saying, you got to be vulnerable. Be ready to come in and dump it. If you leave here with baggage, you're doing it wrong, right? Come dump it. Leave it here.
Have that courage to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
All right.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you talk a lot about residential and outpatient, and what does all that mean?
Oh, yeah, the different levels of care?
Yeah, what are they?
Okay, so typically when you call somebody like Ty MP here on, there's an assessment based on how much you've been using and for how long you've been using. Most likely the number one spot is detox. Right, Ty? Am I getting this right?
Yeah, I mean, if they're actively using, if they've been using for a while, independent on the substance, if they're in that everyday use sort of thing and it's been, a good amount of time, chances are your body's going to go through a little bit of shock if you just stop. And so, yeah, detox would be the level of care recommended for that type of situation.
And if somebody's recommended this podcast to you and you're struggling with especially alcohol or benzodiazepines, please get a medical detox. Do not try to detox on your own at home. It can kill you.
Yeah.
So So that's usually where the first stop's going to be, right? We're going to get you physically. The goal of detox is physical stabilization. We can't treat you mentally if you die on us in a detox, right? So wow, that was a scary thought.
Yeah.
But it's a real thought. It's happened. After that, typically, Shell, why don't you take it?
After detox, and they come into residential where they get to spend some time in the home with other people who are going through the same thing they are, probably fresh out of detox, and everybody feels terrible. You're getting all these questions thrown at you, and what brought you here, and you know, it's like the real world, but without the good music.
And the thing that's beautiful about residential is it's going to give you enough time in a safe environment where you're going to overcome that chronic relapse, right? Because typically, if, like Ty said, if you're using every single day when you come, you're going to have the drive and the desire to still want to use. So we put you in a safe space for 30 to 45, maybe 60 days, depending on how severe. And then it gives your brain long enough that it's not screaming at you 24/7. We want to use, we want to use, we want to use.
Well, and a lot of times, at least from in my conversations with family members or people that are not the ones that are using the drugs, a lot of times people think that people who are using drugs are doing so just to get high. And they're like, oh, they're so selfish and all they care about is that good feeling. When in reality, like if a person gets to the point where they need to come to detox, they're not just using to get high. They're using so that they don't get sick. And people who have never been through addiction or never been through withdrawal don't even understand that concept. And so because as tolerance builds up and, you know, if you've been using for a while, then it's, you know, if you don't get that, your body literally like starts to go into shock. And, you know, there can be seizures, blood pressure, heart rate, sweating, puking, all that stuff. Can't sleep too much, like everything, you know? And so that's the purpose of detox, is to help you get through that phase of stopping the using so that you can then be ready to jump into a program and, you know, go into like a residential type setting.
And one of the main things when I'm talking about level of care is just really emphasizing safety, security, stability, because you cannot get well if you don't feel safe. You cannot get well if you don't feel secure. You cannot get well if you're still trying to survive. And so being able to reiterate, this person needs safety, security, stability, or we cannot save their life. And that I always put that when I'm pushing for residential treatment, because I think that's critical.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And so then the next phase would be day treatment, right? And typically, like Shell's saying, a big question I ask myself before I sign off on a client stepping down to day treatment is, does this client have what it takes to be able to get up on their own, make themselves something to eat, get themselves to group, start getting reacclimated into the community, right? Like, are they able to do that? Is that a possibility? And if the answer is no, then I'm gonna ask for more time. If the answer is, you know what, yeah, like they've become kind of a leader in the house. They're taking on other people that are coming in. They're, you know what I mean, mentoring. Like, then yeah, they're probably ready for a lower level of care, which is PHP, partial hospitalization, 3.1 level of care. I know you probably don't need to know that, but we call it day treatment.
Yeah,
day treatment. You're coming for, 4 to 6 basically hours a day.
Monday through Friday.
Yep. And then, anything anybody want to talk about in day treatment?
That transition going from inpatient to an outpatient level of care is like, be prepared for that. So if anybody that is, you know, never been to rehab before, if you're coming in, if you're listening to this, you know, the part in inpatient is fantastic, and it is residential serves a very important purpose, being a little bubble that it is, and kind of getting you away from the world and away from, you know, people, places, things, and whatnot. But you can't live in that environment forever. You're going to have to go back out to the real world. And, you know, that comes with lots of scary transitions, and, you know, having to go back to, where are you going to live? How are you going to get around? How are you going to get food? How are you going to, you know, go back to work or take care of kids or whatever? And that transition from inpatient to outpatient usually brings on a whole new flood of emotions that people start experiencing. And so prepare yourself for that, because that's when, everything you've been doing in residential, you got to start putting into practice. And it's like, all right, time to expose you to some freedom again. Let's see how you do with it.
You got all this education and all these tools, but we can't make you implement them. You got to implement them.
I always tell my clients when they're getting ready to transition, I'm like, you remember what it felt like when you first moved out of mom and dad's house?
Yeah.
It's that. Because it is. You got to go back to adulting. You got to go back to taking care of your own stuff. You got to go back to filling your own time. You probably got to go back to work. And on top of that, for 30 days prior to this, you were very ill. And your body's still like, okay, we're doing this now. Fine. Let's see what happens. And it is. It can be very overwhelming. And I just want to put bubbles around everybody, but you just can't do that.
I wish we could.
I know.
I think it's interesting too, Ty. I'm glad you brought that up because it made me think of this. Where we lose the most people throughout this whole levels of care process is typically the step down from residential to day treatment. And especially if they step down straight from residential to IOP. Because here's the thing, life is going to hit you in the face. Let's say you're a mom, hypothetical, you're a mom, you got to work, you got kids, right? And you've been struggling with alcohol. Well, we just took away your number one coping tool. So you go back to work, you go back home and you start taking care of kids, you're stressed out. Guess what your brain's going to be screaming at you?
We know how to cope with this.
The liquor store's still open. I mean, right? Am I right?
It worked before, it'll work again.
And that's why it's the hardest, right? Is because, or that euphoric recall. Like for me, I can't go to, when I go to my mom's house, I love you, Mom, if you're listening. Every time I walk past a certain bathroom, it's like my heart starts racing. It's like the body keeps the score. Like it knows, like, hey, that's where things happened, right? And so that euphoric recall where you're like, oh man, it's funny that we don't remember the bad things. We remember the good things or the way. Does that make sense?
Well, trauma is felt as a reaction, not a memory.
Ooh.
It'll ping and you're like, I'm feeling things. Oh, I'm feeling things from stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feeling things.
Feeling things from
From stuff.
Thank you, college education.
Any other questions you got for?
Okay, so let's pretend I'm.
Hold on, we still have one more level of care.
Oh, okay.
So then IOP. Well, I guess two more. You have IOP, which
What
is
is that?
intensive outpatient. Usually it's early in the morning or later at night, right? That's usually when a lot of clients go back to working full time if they've kind of phased back in. That's like 8 to 10 hours a week, so it's usually just 2 hours a day. And then after that, GOP, general outpatient, which that's just kind of a check-in, right? That's a maintenance stage. That's where you're coming one night a week and just checking in. And for us at Steps, you can stay, and I'm probably Hope Rising, you can be in GOP as long as you want. You're always welcome once you've been through. Again, it's maintenance. It's maintenance.
Okay, very cool. All right, so let's pretend that I'm a family member and I have a loved one going into treatment. I've never experienced anything with treatment. How can I let them know that I'm supportive without interfering with their healing process?
Shell, let's let you
Why are
start
you
off with
looking
that
at me?
one.
I think it's a two-parter. I think it's so important and so critical for families to be involved, especially if they can be a healthy influence. And certainly, when someone's going into treatment, hopefully they can have that conversation with their family saying, this is where I'm going to be. I'm not going to be able to talk to you. And, they kind of understand the whole release of information stuff. And yes, you can call and ask. But something else to recognize is even if your family member in treatment has given permission for you to know about their care, they might have some things that they don't want you to know about. And on our end, they're going to say, okay, you can tell them that I'm alive, but you can't tell them anything else. And we're restricted by that because we need to respect people's privacy and their right to privacy, even from their family members, because it's not just about treatment. It's about a family dynamic that they're walking away from and will someday go back to. So be supportive, be there, line up, ask your questions, show your support and love, but know that you might not be able to be involved at all levels of care, and that's between you and your loved one. And just know that it's going to take time because healing happens first here, and then it spreads out.
So how long can you not have contact with the family member? Is that the whole time or just?
Ty, go ahead and take that one.
generally, and I know what it looks like at our place, but there's generally a blackout period for the first week, and I think that's pretty similar for most treatment centers. But there's blackout period for that first week. They want the client to come in, get acclimated to their surroundings, understand what the schedule looks like. After they've been there, they start to get all settled in. Then family members can start coming to visit on certain days. The clients are able to make phone calls at most places. And that becomes a privilege also for most places, I think, where, if you're not doing what you're supposed to, or if there's behavior issues, you might get your phone call privileges taken away. And so it depends. I always like to tell families, no news is good news. And so if you don't hear anything, it's okay. Everything's going according to plan. But at some point, the therapists are going to want to start involving you and inviting you to the family groups, and somebody will reach out and tell you about where to come at what time and what it looks like and things like that.
And also too, at most facilities, like Ty's talking about, we have family group. At Steps, we do a family group, and we also do like a family support group where it's just family members, no clients, and just for information, education, to help kind of make them aware. Honestly, the advice I would have for a family member is, if you really want to be supportive, take their phone calls, come visit, join family group, but more importantly, find your own program. And that offends family members when I say that, because they're like, well, I'm not the one with the problem. But you're involved with somebody who has you contribute in some way, even if you do not realize it. Al-Anon, Nar-Anon, we have craft, right? Through USARA here in Utah. Like, find your own program, because sure, it's your loved one's responsibility for their recovery. But if you truly want to support them, find out how you're contributing to their substance abuse.
I think
Sorry. And attend to your own needs, your own mental health, self-secure needs. Or you might inadvertently, through no secure, right in the front of your face fault of your own, could be recontributing to an issue. It's a reality in families. Addiction is a secondary thing to lots of other stuff that might be going on. So take care of yourself so that you are in the best position to help someone who might still need you.
Yeah, that's great. I love it.
I think that's one of the hardest conversations to have with family members, is trying to help them understand the importance of themselves getting help, and not even necessarily help, but just educate yourself. Yeah. Start learning stuff. And it's really hard for a family member to admit that probably for the longest time, they have been suffering more from somebody else's drug use than that person that's abusing the drugs. When I know for me, when I was in my active using days, I didn't care if my family was suffering. I didn't care how pissed off they were or upset, or I don't care how I burned bridges or whatever. They spent years like suffering and wanting to know, and like having all this emotional pain and damage. They need to heal from that too. And it's really hard for family members to understand, well, if I get smarter on how to set boundaries and communicate better, that's going to be what helps them the best. A lot of times family members think like, oh, I need to give them rides, and I need to give them gas money, and I need to buy them food, and I need to pay their bills. That's not the case. Like, you need to learn how to communicate better. You need to learn how to set boundaries, learn how to tell them no in a loving way, and educate yourself. The best thing family members can do is educate yourself. And you do that by coming to these family groups and participating as much as you can, and get yourself right. And that is the very best thing you can do for somebody that struggles with drugs close to you.
Agreed.
What you're talking about, there's a concept called universalism. A lot of clients come in and they have this idea, whether it's sharing about trauma, whether it's sharing about resentments, whether it's sharing about shame, they think in their mind, I'm the only person that's gone through this, right? I'm unique. Nobody else could understand my pain because it's so terrible. The beautiful thing about a group session is when you hear somebody else share your story, you're like, maybe I'm not so broken. Maybe I'm not alone. Maybe now this person knows what I'm going through. They literally just said the exact same thing that I'm thinking or I'm feeling. That same thing happens in family support groups like the Al-Anons, the Nar-Anons, and the Crafts. When you sit and you hear a family member talk about, I felt helpless. I didn't know what to do. I was angry one minute. I was sad the next. And you hear that, you experience this like, I'm not alone. Universalism. Does that help? Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
yeah, that does. I feel like that would be very difficult to not to tell a loved one no when you know they're struggling.
For sure,
Setting
but
those
sometimes it's
boundaries.
the best thing that you can do, right? Like I always tell family members, I say, listen, I didn't get clean until my mom stopped enabling me. When I called her and said, hey, bail me out of jail, and she said, sorry, but I can't. Well, now I got to deal with it. Now I've got to fix my own problem, because guess what? It was a lot easier for other people to fix my problems for me so that I could have my cake and eat it too. But when I started having to clean up the messes that I was making myself, that's not fun. Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So yeah, but I get it. Tough love.
yeah,
It's a hard thing.
for sure. This is probably a little bit of a curveball, but treatment is scary. It's a scary thing, right, to go into. What are some like common fears that people have? And I mean, how do you guys address that?
Shell, you want to, from
Why
your
do you give me the
experience?
curveball? Honestly, probably the biggest one that I've seen in all of the treatment I've done is the guilt and shame of having been in this position, and the fear of your own feelings. The fear of what would it be like to actually sit with my sorrow? What would it be like to actually have to explore my anger and sit with it, not escape it, not numb it, not point it elsewhere, but actually deal with it and manage it? That's what I see is the biggest challenge, is just people being willing to sit with themselves, not realizing that they've been with themselves this whole time, but actually really getting to know yourself, to be curious about your thoughts, your feelings, your life, and be, again, willing and vulnerable to say, I will sit here with this. It's going to be horrible, and I'm terrified. And I think that's why our job is so important, to be willing to say, I will sit here with you, and we will ride out the storm, and you don't have to be afraid of yourself.
I think that's beautiful that you said that, because
so
Mandy, when you asked that question, my head went to my own, like, you know, some of the biggest fears that I have, you know, and I think that everything you just said is something that a lot of times people don't even anticipate that until they're there. I think that one of the biggest fears before you get to rehab is just leaving this world behind and having to not know what it's going to look like. And, you know, I think a lot of times people don't even comprehend how much more afraid they're going to start feeling once they're there, and all the emotions start coming back, and everything you've been running from slaps you right in the face, and you got to start dealing with it now. And it's like, oh crap, I kind of made a big mess. How am I ever going to come back from all this? And you don't think about that when you're using, you know. I think the big fears are, you know, am I going to be able to smoke cigarettes, or am I going to be able to, you know, make phone calls or check my Facebook, or, you know what I mean? Like very simple things like that. And then when you get there, you're through the withdrawals, detox is done, and now you got to start dealing with all of your behaviors that you got to start changing. It's like, oh man, like this might be a little bigger than I thought.
I saw a great quote, and I wish I could credit the actual creator of it, but it basically said the reason that people don't want to change is it's not because of what they're going to gain, is what they have to give up. And I think, you know, we see that a lot. Oh
yeah,
it's like,
just this
oh
last
man,
week.
who am I going to be if I'm well?
Yeah. Just this last week, I called out a client. I said, what would you do without your misery? You're in love with your misery. But you know what, though? In those moments, that may sound harsh, it was eye-opening for this individual. They literally, on their takeaway sheet, they wrote, I learned something about me that I didn't even realize. And for some people, those are the breaks that they need. That direct, you know, maybe a little harsh feedback can really give them a perspective that they've never seen before, they've never considered. I was going to say one of my biggest fears is I can't tell you how many times I tried getting clean on my own, and I would make it a day, or I would make it 2 days, and then I'd fall on my face again. Or I'd make it 3 days, and I'd fall on my face again. And so I think a big fear coming from an ex-opiate addict was, how long am I going to be sick? Am I going to be able to withstand the physical withdrawals? How long am I physically going to feel cruddy for? Because listen, it wasn't fun after a minute. Like my last probably couple years, I wasn't using because it was like party time. I was using because I had to go to work. I had to show up and be a dad for my kids. I had, right? Like it's that physical hook that was in me. So for me, that's what my biggest fear would be. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Anything we got about a minute and 15 seconds left. Any kind of burning desire messages that you want for somebody out there that's thinking about treatment? Just open it up.
I want to say, be prepared. Like, I think what people need to understand is that when you come to rehab, we don't just have like a cure. We don't just fix people and then send them back, and they're all fixed, whatever. Like, we don't have any magic potions or secret tricks that is hidden from the world. You don't come to rehab and just get it handed to you. Like, the whole purpose of rehab is to create a therapeutic environment so that hopefully a person can come and go on their own spiritual journey and have their own like self-discovery and understand like, hey, I've got things about myself that I need to change. And that part takes work. And so don't just come and expect to sit in a chair and be told everything that you need to do and then you're going to be healed. Like, come, like, pay attention to what you need to change.
Well said. Thank you guys so much for coming on here. This was fun.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Listen, 50-something minutes flew by.
It did.
Thank you, babe. You had some great questions. I would have been stumbling through it without you.
Thanks, Dr. Sellers.
Yeah,
Yes.
you got it.
Thank you for joining us today on We Do Recover with Jared Miller.
Help us spread our message of hope. Like, comment, and share.
If you have any topics or ideas for future shows, please share that on our Facebook page.
That Facebook page is We Do Recover with Jared Miller. If you or a loved one needs help, please reach out to us. Again, thank you for listening.
Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. This has been a production from a podcast studio.